All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to our chit chat. We've got Michaela back, and today we are talking about the D'Amelios new show on Hulu that launched earlier this month. So we've got some fun insights that we're going to share
Yes.
with you. But Michaela, give us the rundown on what the show's about.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, most of you probably do. The D'Amelios are a family out in Hollywood. They kind of rose to fame because their youngest daughter, Charlie, blew up on TikTok. She's now the most followed person on TikTok. She has an older sister who also does social media, and the family during 2020 moved out to LA to pursue business ventures. And they now have a show on Hulu, like just mentioned, kind of just following their life. It's a reality show. And, of course, being in this industry, we took it upon ourselves to watch it and see what we thought. So, yeah, that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's a cool one. And I think so. Charlie has about 124 million followers on TikTok, and
Yeah.
Dixie, who's her older sister, has about 55 million. And today, Charlie is 17 and Dixie is
I think she's 19.
19, I think. So they're still relatively young, especially Charlie. I mean, she rose to fame when she was 15.
Yeah.
So I think that just knowing that is really important, because I know for myself, it's like, I know who she is, I follow her, but I hadn't really thought about the fact that she got popular when she was 15, and she's been figuring this out
Yeah.
as she goes through, a very what can be a tumultuous time emotionally, I think, for a lot of teenagers, right? So with
Yeah,
all this on top of it,
absolutely.
it's a lot, right? And I think it really kind of, it's interesting timing, right? Because the Kardashians went off air and then they come on. But this feels, I think across the board, everyone is even saying this feels very authentic, right? This doesn't
Hmm.
feel like it's this big staged production of like trying to make you feel so sorry for them. I think this is really more of like a true peek behind the curtain, like what reality TV really used to be, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's harder when you start out as a social media influencer celebrity. I think when you transition to TV, you can't really be anything but authentic, because it's going to be so painfully obvious to
Exactly.
everyone if you're trying to put something on, right?
Yeah, we've seen that before. There's tons of, influencer friend groups who have, tried to have reality shows in the past and just hasn't come off, I think, the way it was intended to. But this show, it really did feel like an authentic look into their life. And I think, that was the whole point of the show. They're trying to give you an insight into the fact that these are regular girls who, rose to fame very quickly, and their family kind of picked up everything to come out to LA to pursue business opportunities, and kind of just what all of that has brought onto the girls in terms of, their mental health, things they're going through, like you said, at their age, and just being parts of being an influencer,
Yeah,
really.
absolutely. And I think it's really easy to write it off and say, oh, well, poor them, they're making all this money. Boo hoo. Right. I think that's it, especially for
Mm-hmm.
like, I think people who are like my age and older, that's a very easy thing to kind of rebuttal almost, right? But
Right.
I do think it's very much of our time, right? You think about, okay, she was 15 in her bedroom doing like dance competitions and fun stuff. She gets on TikTok, she has fun. The algorithm picks her up and propels her to like
Mm-hmm.
fame overnight. So they go with it, right? Who wouldn't go with it? I mean,
Right.
you'd have to be insane to not go do all that sort of stuff. And they hire, a former UTA guy to come over and like be the president of their business. So you go from like just hanging out to like boom, full on stardom. And
Yeah.
that's quite a lot for someone who didn't necessarily seek it out. Right. I think that
Exactly.
may be a big difference here, is like someone who is trying to be an actor, someone who's trying to be a musician, like the next Beyonce or whomever.
Mm-hmm.
They want the fame. They're seeking the fame. They like the attention. They probably grown up performing, and it's something that they
Right.
enjoy. Right. Whereas that's not necessarily the case here. Um,
Yeah, she talks a lot about Charlie talks a lot about just being, a teenager dancing on TikTok because she thought it was fun. She
yeah.
did dance competitions her whole life, and it came easily to her. And so I think, a lot of the conversations she has on the show are just about, I didn't ask for this or want this, but I see the positives and the opportunities in it. So I'm here and I'm doing it, but it's also really, really hard and really confusing. And there's a lot of other things that come along with it, like feeling pressure because I brought my family to LA. because I had these opportunities, we uprooted our life in Connecticut. And I'm also just a 17-year-old girl, like trying to figure
Right.
myself out.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, right? Because especially when you talk to younger sort of pre-college people, a lot of them are saying, hey, I want to be a creator, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. These are the people who younger people all over the world are looking up to, and they're seeing this as a viable career. And they're
Yeah.
saying, this is what I want to do. And so I do think it's important to kind of peel the layers back a little bit and show that it's not all glitz and glam, because social media has, there's so many good positive things about social media, and I know that I love it. Obviously I've made a career out of social media, but I love it. And I feel like the reason that I love it is because I feel like I get to peek behind the curtain at all these other lifestyles that maybe I'm not doing, that I
Mhm.
think I'm interested in. Or I get to learn a ton, right? I learn a ton about health and wellness all the time on Instagram. That's what the majority of my feed is honestly made up of. So I use it as an education tool, and just a fun sort of
Yeah.
escape, maybe a little bit. Um, but that's not necessarily the case, right? Like there are a
Right.
lot of people who don't necessarily understand that, like, guess what? Everyone's got eyelash extensions. Everyone's got
Hmm.
35 pounds of makeup on, and hair extensions and ring lights and like all of these things
Exactly.
that make them look really interesting. And they're not, they're showing you this big, beautiful vista of this hike that they went on with their family, but they're not showing you the meltdowns and the temper tantrums and how stressful it was to get there. So
Exactly.
it leaves a lot of this, like, what am I doing wrong, or why not me sort of
Yeah.
feeling, that I think is very tough to deal with and balance when you are younger and more impressionable.
Yeah. And I think it's an important conversation for their audiences specifically to be a part of, right? Which is why I really like the direction that the show went, because the people who are predominantly watching the show are their young followers, right?
Sure.
And like you're saying, those are the people who grew up on social media. They had phones when they were 10 years old. They had social
iPad
media when they
babies.
were
Yep.
12. Exactly, iPad babies. And, for me, I look at people that age now and I'm like, wow, how do they look like this on Instagram? They're 14, 15. When I was that age, I didn't look like that, but it's because they've grown up on social media and they're watching all these influencers. But my point was, the importance of the message behind this show to their audiences is what really stood out to me, because I think
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to say, okay, yes, we grew this following really fast and you all look up to us and you want to do this as a career, but also this is the downside. This is the part you don't see. And it's really important that you specifically understand this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, especially, you look at, there's been a lot of buzz around mental health lately, right? And I think a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
started with this show. And then you've got Facebook getting in trouble with the Wall Street Journal sort of expose on them, talking about how they
Yeah.
know the negative impacts that this has on teenagers, especially teenage girls.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of how with social media, it's like anything else, right? I mean, I think you can, if you use it properly, it's okay. It's when we over index or we don't control the addiction or whatever it is
Yeah.
that we run into trouble. And I think a show like this is great because it does level set things, but it also really shines a very sort of bright light on a very dark spot
Mm-hmm.
of how things go. And I think it's important that young people figure this out. I mean, it's it's tough. It's a tough world to be a part of. And I think that
Yeah.
the thing that makes it so challenging is that the parents of these younger influencers or these younger audiences do not know how to help, because they're not even
Mm-hmm.
involved, right? They're not on
Right.
TikTok. They're not on Snapchat. They're probably on Instagram, but like they just don't quite understand the
Yeah.
dynamics of it. And so, I think there're going to be a lot of I hope that this sort of starts a conversation around how can we help guide our younger generations in this digital world? How can we help them balance what's going
Yeah.
on here? Um, and I think there are likely probably going to be, a lot of brands and a lot of companies that can kind of step in and help create this or help solve some of these problems.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy that the show went in that direction as opposed to, a traditional reality
Yeah.
show, just kind of showing the day to day, because I do think it started a really important conversation. I mean, even just within our company and,
Yeah.
within my personal relationships, it started a conversation. So I hope that it did the same for other people who watched.
Yeah. And I think stay tuned, because we are working on a little something that we think is going to be helpful for this. this up and coming generation. So if you're a brand that wants to get in on part of that conversation and help us, give us a shout.